regards to the advisory committee and really making sure that we get some input from you. And because as this industry has matured and developed, these are individuals that have really been very critical in assisting us with a lot of the issues that are going on out there. So we'll have hopefully plenty of time to hear from you as well. So I will go ahead and get started. Terry's gonna go ahead and, we don't have a clicker, but we'll go ahead and get started. So the discussion points that we're gonna go over today are program growth and impact of that growth on the program and some registered land area data. We're gonna get some legislative updates, some water issues impacting registrants, proposed rules, and yeah, they're proposed at this time. Terry, would you mind doing that? So we'll want to get some thoughts and input on those. The Certified Seed Program update, compliance issues, law enforcement issues, and agenda items from the advisory committee members. And then we also have some other guests here today that may be able to, there may be some questions for. Jeff Lawrence is here from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. He's expected to be here, he's probably not here yet, but we're expecting him. Jim Barak, who's the MED director.
Good morning.
Good morning, thanks for coming and being with us. And then Alan Call from the AG's office. All right, thanks for being here.
His Latvian bag carrier.
I'm sorry?
I carry his bag and I'm his Latvian minion, general minion dude.
But it is good to point out, so Alan represents Marijuana Enforcement Division.
Okay, great.
The AG's office.
And actually, before we get started, we should really have the committee members go around and introduce themselves. So if you want to go ahead and get started.
Sure. Ed Lehrberger with Pure Hemp Technology.
Graham Carlson with Charlotte Swiss.
I'm Greta Finn, I'm counsel for the Department of Agriculture.
Grant Orvis represents C Certified Industry.
Ben Holmes, Centennial Seed.
Okay, so thank you all for being here. Appreciate this group all being here and the interest today.
Does anyone know where the sign-in sheet went?
Yes, we can have the committee members circulate the sign-in sheet so we have a record of everybody who's here today. Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Jeff Lawrence.
Sorry Jeff Lawrence.
Yeah, Jeff
From-
Lawrence with the CDPHE, sorry for being late, folks.
Okay, there's other people that'll still be straggling in, so thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us.
Is there anybody on the phone?
Is there anybody on the phone? We don't want to forget you. No? Okay. We may have some call-ins. So, okay, so let's get started. Program growth and impact of growth on the program. This is basically a historical view from 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and we'll be looking at another slide of 18, but you can see the trajectory here. Going from, and I'll just sort of read this to you, in terms of registered acres, we've gone from approximately 1,800 to a little over 3,600 to almost 9,000 to 12,000, and then in 2018 we've gone to almost 31,000 of registered acres. In terms of square feet, same trajectory in terms of significant increase. We started with 253,000 square feet, went to 571,000, jumped to 1.36 million, then to 2.3 million, and we don't have that last figure, John, there.
That's 110 acres.
Okay, it's about 5 million. So, registrants, and let me, the distinction between registrants and registrations is that a registration is a registration of a registered land area, and a registrant could have multiple registrations. So that's the distinction there. So registrants, we've gone from 131, jumped to 166, jumped to 312, 386, 828. And then registrations, which again, this is our registered land areas, 259 to 333, 424, 532 to now over 1,000. So that is the direction that this program has gone in really a relatively short amount of time. And this is what we, kind of a snapshot, our most recent, well, not our most recent snapshot, because this is something that changes daily as we process applications and as applications expire. But as of October 26th, we had 828 registrants, 1,063 registrations, and pretty similar to what I just said, 30,000, yeah, those are actually the same numbers. So that's where we're at today, for the most part. Okay, so in terms of what's planted of those acres, we have registered almost 31,000 acres, and reported planted is about 17,000. Okay, and then, so oftentimes people will register a land area and not plant on all of it, and that's why you see the one of the reasons you'll see the 14,042, because those are registered land areas, but they're not reported as having planted. And then we have, for the DNP is did not plant, and that's the reported did not plant. And that can be for a variety of reasons. But we ask registrants to also report that on the planting reports. Now, we do have 194 registrations not reported, and this is something that we definitely, I want to bring to your attention, because you can't have this kind of growth without, we have a lot of area for, that we need to work on, and this would be one of them. We got very much inundated this last year with this big jump of 500 registrations, but we're aware of it, and we need to really make sure that we are getting all these reports in, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit more. So we'll be working on that.
I just want to comment on this too, just to come up with a number, going through all the information. I completely ignored the indoor grows, so there could be a lot of indoor only grows that reported that are showing up in that number.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that.
More chairs, bigger room.
This is really small print. I'm not gonna read it to you. I just want you to know it's available, and then if you have any questions about it, I'm more than happy to provide it to you. But this is a breakdown in the years 2015, or 16, 17, and 18 in terms of how the number of applications or registrations that were issued each month during those years. And so, like I said, I know that this is too small to read, but I just want you to know that this information is available. Okay, this is where we're starting to look at this growth of the program, and we just sort of laid the foundation for that a little bit, and this is where we start to talk about the impact on the program. And this is the registrations by month, the number that we issue per month. And the gray is 2016, the blue is 2017, and then the red is 2018. So you can see, even from 2017 to 2018, the significant jump in registrations that we've processed. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but this has been an ongoing situation in terms of the number of registrations, the increase in registrations we're receiving per month. Even at this time of year, we're just gonna have to pull it back here. A significant number of applications come in. So, the registrations have consistently increased by approximately 30% on average each year. But from 2017 to 2018, they increased by 99%. We had 350% more registrations that were processed in 2018 in the program's first year. 528% more registrants are being served than in the program's first year. And 100% increase in last year's registrations, and 104% increase in registrants, and 137% increase in acreage. So this is, in any business, any regulatory agency, anything, this is a significant amount of growth that we're experiencing. What it'll look like next year, I don't know. And we'll try to get some thoughts about that from our advisory committee when we have a chance to talk. We asked that question last year, and we were told that it would grow significantly, and that's what happened. So I'd love to hear your input on that. Yes. Okay, so this is the breakdown of registered land areas by size. So we have over 1,000 registrants, and so what this looks at is how big are those registered land areas. And without reading all of these numbers to you, and again, all this information will be available to you. We are at this point, we're about 38, close to 39% are 5 acres or under. So that gives you an idea of who's registering to grow industrial hemp. Obviously, as this industry continues to emerge, we anticipate seeing the larger acres, but that's where we're at this point still. And we have, in terms of the larger acreage, from 5 to 10, we have, it's about 15%. From 120, from 10 to 20, it's about 12, almost 13%. About 13% from 20 to 50 acres. 50 to 100 acres is about 10%. 100 to 200 acres is about 7.8%, and then the 225 to 510 acres is about 2%. So that's what this looks like in terms of size of registered land areas.
And was that the largest registration area, was that 510 acres?
For a registered land area,
Do you know if they planted all 510?
No, they did not. Nobody does, really.
yeah, I
Good to
don't,
know.
very few people plant the whole area that they register, unless you're a smaller one. But when you get into the bigger ones, not so much. Okay, and then as far as this, that was the outdoor acreage. As far as the indoor acreage, I'll start from the bottom on this one, because the 3,000 square feet or less is about 42% of our registered land areas. And then from the 3,000 to 10,000, that makes up about 37%. The 10,000 to 50,000 is about 17%, and then over the really large 50,000 to 195,000 is about close to 4%.
There he is.
We're glad to have you.
Well,
If I lived here, I'd be an alcoholic.
Because of the traffic.
An hour and a half to get from one end to the other.
I know.
Wow.
Well, we're glad you
I'm
have,
sorry.
we're glad you made it. Okay, so. Kind of let you absorb some of this data and some of this information. We're gonna look at breakdown by county. And again, this information is available to you. I'll just point out some of the larger, number ones. For total registered area, acres, this is 1 out of 52 counties, okay? Buck is, at this point, number 1 for that, in that category. For the number of registrations in a county, Weld is number 1. There's 99 registrations, registered land areas in Weld County. And then, if you wanna go down to, I think it's Adams is number 1 in terms of square feet. Okay, and then Adams County, out of all the counties, is number 1 in terms of indoor square feet that are registered.
So if anybody wants to see a specific county, we can find it.
Is
Does
Bol-
anybody?
is
'cause we
Boulder
wanna make
County?
this interesting
Is
for
Boulder
Jesse.
County?
I'm sorry?
Oh,
If you go all the way down, go back.
oh, I see. No, I don't see it.
Are there any that have 0 registrations?
Yeah, there are.
You.
Was there 56 or 64 counties?
Can you go back up?
Back up one screenshot, please.
But the takeaway, I think, is that most counties throughout Colorado
Am I,
have registrations.
am I missing Boulder? Cause I guess I don't see it.
17.
Number 17? Oh, got it. Thank you.
So, and we can, again, this information will be available, but just to kind of give you the big picture of that. Okay, so all of that, what's the impact of the growth on the program? And this is from, the staff who's is processing all of this. We really now basically have an endless application season and a busier typical application season.
Yeah.
Jessica, do you wanna speak to that for just a second?
No, I mean, you saw the numbers that we grew, the registrations grew by 100% over the last year from 2017 to 2018. Each month we see pretty much 100% growth from the year before, so it's not, we used to kind of have a lull in the winter where we do 10, 15 applications a month. We're getting that probably at least that many a week. I got 17 in just this week already, and we were closed on Monday, so I guess that's Monday's mail too, but yeah, no, it's not, it doesn't slow down, we don't have a lull, and then the busy months are, you know, we thought it was crazy 2 years ago when we got 100 in 1 month, and this year we got over 200 in 1 month.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just to kind of give you an idea. One of the concerns with all this is we have a high volume of applications that are inaccurate and incomplete. And we've worked really hard over the last 3 years to provide tools online and within the application. We've tried really hard to you know, figure out as we go through the process where the problems are, where the confusion is, and then we try to you know, we'll have to update our forms to make sure that we're, you know, clear in that area. But we just continue to have a high volume of applications that are inaccurate and incomplete. And of course, this just really slows down the process certainly for the applicant, and certainly for the staff who we have really tried to work a lot with these applications to get the corrections so we can keep it moving through. But with this volume, that's getting to be more and more of a challenge for us. So this is an important point in terms of we're going to, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we need to address this because that's a pretty significant number. Yes?
Last year we talked about getting everything online, and you're doing a lot of applications online. I know that we were last in line. How close are we?
Still last.
We are a little farther than last in line. We moved to an ag license, or are moving most of our programs to an ag license system, which we most recently, 3 or 4 months ago, found out is built on a platform that Microsoft will no longer support. July of 2020, so we're gonna finish moving the programs that we have there as we start to look at another place to start to move data and analyze data. So,
It's also worth noting that most of what we've trimmed down the application, it might look, it has a couple more pages, but we've tried to trim it down to only what we absolutely have to ask for. Everything we ask for, we have to have by rule or by law. So a lot of people, you know, there's little things that we have to go back to have people correct that probably annoy them, because can't we just write it, or can't, you know, does it have to be there? It does. It's in the rule or it's in the law. If it's in the application, almost everything in there we are required to have on file. So there's no dumbing down the application to make it go smoother.
Yeah.
So that would not be an option, so hopefully we find better online solutions for
Right,
sure.
and
Yeah.
then anything's wrong online, just kicked back to them. It doesn't have to go to you guys and then waste
Exactly,
your time.
so that's kind of.
I would love to
our
give what
only-
you're raising
our
some
only option
attention
is to
today.
figure it out that way.
Yes.
So we'll definitely talk about that. We have a high volume of reports. I mean, you know, pre-planning reports, planning reports, and harvest reports are part of the compliance program, and all registrants are required to submit these reports. And so when you consider the number of registrants, and everybody's supposed to be submitting one of these kinds of reports, you can imagine the volume of paper we're dealing with and reporting information. And we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about a lean study we did. Yes?
80% getting kicked back, that's not, you can't do your job.
Right.
That's not possible.
We have a problem, and that's, we're identifying and we need to find solutions to these, but yes, I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But, so it's just been voluminous, and so, and like I said, we'll talk a little bit about this in just a minute when we talk about our lean study. Oh, wait, there was one more bullet on there. And then we have a high volume of amended harvest reports. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's when a harvest report is submitted. They're supposed to be submitted at least 30 days before the anticipated harvest date, and then the registrant changes the harvest date, and so now they need to submit, and we actually are trying to address this in rule, but this happening at, you know, during the harvest season is a lot to try to manage when this is happening,
Yeah.
you know, all the time. Okay, next slide. The other thing that we see that is changes in contacts. We have a lot of that going on, and we understand, I mean, people are required to submit a change in contacts, but it certainly is something that takes administrative time. Altered registered land areas, we get a fair number. You can't change the size of the registered land area, so if you register 10 acres, you can't expand that during the registered, while that registration is valid, but you can add sort of an indoor grow space onto the registered land area, and that's what I mean by altered registered land areas, and we get a significant number of those. That's something that I'm hoping that will be changing, because instead of, we'll be putting a form online so that can be filled out and easily submitted, because otherwise there's been a lot of back and forth. They contact me and then I contact them and they contact me, and we need to streamline that better. So we'll be looking to making some improvements in that area. Internal conflicts, there's just so many problems that go on within a registration, and we get a lot of calls about that, and we have to be really clear about where our parameters are and what affects the registration and what is something that is outside of our jurisdiction, outside of something we can do. But that's why we tell people, and we'll be emphasizing this at the end of your review, please, talk to each other before you decide to be in a registration together, because if there's a fallout during that, while the registration's effective, it can really cause a lot of havoc, and it's a lot of time for us. I kind of call it industrial hemp divorce court, so.
That's funny.
Because it's
That's
kinda,
horrible.
that's what it feels like, and it's like, whoa. So, and then just closures, and closures are significant because, if somebody has a registration they're valid for 1 year and then they want to close it, we may want to go out there and inspect before we close it. We certainly have that right to do that, and so that can be an administrative drain as well. And we understand there's reasons for doing it, but we also know that they expire within a year. So is there a valid reason for closing this because it's going to expire in a year within 365 days of issuance? So those are the kinds of things that certainly take time. A substantial amount of time spent answering non-program questions. I would easily estimate 50% of the phone calls are about non-program questions. And we try to be really helpful, but the time that we do have, I feel like I want to make sure that the registrants are getting that time, because they're the ones that are paying for the registrations and are part of this program. And it seems like everybody calls us if there's any issue related to industrial hemp, and we understand this is an emerging industry and we want to be helpful, but when we have this sort of dynamic going on, and oftentimes they'll ask the same question 3 ways because they really want an answer, and I understand they're frustrated, and I understand that there are a lot of things in industrial hemp that there aren't answers to right now, but the industrial hemp program can't be the one that's handling all this. So this is an area, and then providing answers that are available on the website. That's why we have a lot of it, but we find that, quite frankly, a lot of people really don't want to do that. They just want to call and get an answer. So, a substantial amount of time spent on education. Now that's what we're here to do. We want to do that. We want to be able to work with our registrants and and educate them. So, but there is a lot of time. This is, whether it be farmers who aren't used to, who've been farming for a long time, who aren't used to submitting reports, or if it's individuals who have never grown anything before, there's a pretty significant education curve that's going on in this program. And then we also get misinformation that's being given out by what we hear are industry experts, and that's really problematic because it's, I see some head shaking, like that's definitely going on. And, that's why we have a website, that's why we try to put that information so that the accurate information is available. Okay. So this is just a little bit about the lean study, and a lean study is, these are studies that the state does, and really what they're trying to do in these studies is they're trying to look for, at a program and how there's people that have expertise in this, and they study how you process, how you do things, and where they can advise you in terms of improving your efficiencies. So I thought it was great. I was glad that Dwayne was able to get that set up for us, because I thought that was a really good thing for us. What came out of it is that that the way it's currently set up right now, the program, that we would need 3.6 staff, and that TM is Terry Moran, without Terry Moran. And we need an online application reporting system. Now, I certainly think that we may not need that staff number if we can get the online application reporting system. I mean, that would certainly be the place to start. So that's something that we can really hope that we can get implemented. And certainly the suggestion from the lean study was to try to eliminate paper as much as possible. And that's a movement that's going on in just everywhere, in every, I think, corporate state agencies. But because of this reporting, we have a lot of paper, and it's just very difficult to manage. And so some of the suggestions so far has been a Google form for planning and harvest reports. So, but again, Grant, I'd love to talk about this a little bit more. And then it was also, we were also advised not to repeatedly process incomplete and inaccurate registrations, because as we looked at that slide earlier, we're getting about 50% of those. And we're going to have to we really wanted to be helpful, and we want everybody to be able to get registered, but we're going to have to do something about that, because, and that's what was recommended to us by the person who conducted the lean study. Okay. Just some legislative updates, just some of the legislation that's gone on that touches industrial hemp, and I'll just kind of go through this. The reclaimed water use on industrial hemp, this was concerning the allowable uses of reclaimed domestic wastewater, and in connection therewith, basically allowing reclaimed domestic wastewater to be used for industrial hemp cultivation. Why don't you keep going, we've got other things. The Colorado Industrial Hemp Research and Development Authority, this was concerning the creation of the Colorado Industrial Hemp Research and Development Authority, and there's been a task force that was created to study this. We have the change in industrial hemp to a statutory THC limit, which we'll talk about as Amendment X, but I just wanted to put that up there. Hemp products deemed not adulterated or misbranded. We have an expert in the room on that, Florence, but this concerns the modifications to the Colorado Food and Drug Act to allow products containing industrial hemp and in connection therewith, that these products containing industrial hemp are not adulterated or misbranded by virtue of containing industrial hemp. So that was if there's any questions about that, we can certainly rely upon our expert. Okay, and then industrial hemp designation agricultural crop, concerning the regulation of industrial hemp as an agricultural product. And then identifying the unprocessed seeds of industrial hemp as a commodity under the Commodity Handler Act, and industrial hemp as a farm product under the Farm Products Act. So that's a division of the CDA that has seen an increase in registrations as well. And then in terms of Amendment X, I know that there's been a lot of opinion about this, but at this point it's been decided, so I'll just make a few points. Essentially it's industrial hemp has the same meaning as defined in federal law or farmers, the term is defined in Colorado statute. This was the outcome. 60.63% voted yes, and 39.37% voted no. So what were some of the viewpoints? Some of you in this room, I took some of your statements, so you see your words. As far as the pros, the Colorado hemp farmers could be at a competitive disadvantage compared to other states if the federally recognized limit changes from 0.3% THC. In other words, it was sort of stuck in the Constitution. And the problem with that is, this allows for flexibility to adjust that federal definition rather than the time it would take to get it out. Of course, the cons are that allows for a number to be set by statute through the legislative process, and there's certainly those that didn't want it to move in that direction, and a concern that if Colorado set a number above the federal limit, whatever that, if that changes, it could cause the Colorado program to be non-farm compliant. And that, of course, could have an adverse impact on banking, insurance, commerce, universities, etc. A couple more pros and cons. Those that were for this thought that farmers in other states may not have to lose as much of their crop as Colorado if the federal definition is higher. So if in Colorado it's 0.3, but the federal definition is higher, Colorado farmers may suffer from that. And it ensures the flexibility for farmers to be able to compete nationally, if not internationally. Now, conversely, interestingly enough, also a concern for the farmers on the con side is removing the definition from the Constitution may cause uncertainty among industrial hemp growers. And there are some that don't like the idea of lawmakers being able to change the definition willy-nilly. So. But again, it's decided. So. Okay, this is a really important point, something that we haven't really touched upon, either in our advisory committee meetings or end of year reviews that I can recall. But I know I started getting emails from the division from the Division of Water Resources about industrial hemp registrants that didn't have legal water use, essentially. And what were we doing about it? What was the industrial hemp program doing about it? And as I explained to them, we don't have jurisdiction over that. We don't ask that question about whether or not you have legal rights to water because it wouldn't impact whether or not they were issued a registration. So Wayne and I had the opportunity to go meet. I thought it was a really good meeting. I think this is something that we really do need to educate our applicants about, and we will do more of that. But it's not something that the industrial hemp program has any sort of authority over. So basically, like other water users, industrial hemp registrants must have a legal source of water for their uses. And as with other water users, the Division of Water Resources may require documentation regarding a water user's water supply, and this may come from one of these categories, either a municipal supply, a well water, a surface water, a hauled water. But they are issuing cease and desists to those that are not using water legally, and of course that can, very adversely impact their ability to grow industrial hemp if that's what they're relying upon. So this is really, I think, something that we need to get more on the radar. And next slide. And this, so as I said, cease and desist orders are being issued, and a failure to comply can result in this being transferred over to the Office of the Attorney General, bringing a lawsuit that may include penalties of up to $500 per day. So this isn't, again, and certainly that division can speak more to this than we can, because it's not our area, but I feel like, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we're having, highlighting this, because this could be very, very adverse impact to our registrants. Okay, so now we've gone from, I always like to do synopsis, we've gone from, kind of the growth of the program, the impact on the program, legislative updates. Now we're gonna get into the compliance issues, because that's what this is. This is a regulatory program, it's a compliance program, and that's what people are signing up for. Although I will tell you that so many of the applicants are so excited to get an industrial hemp application that they really oftentimes have no idea of what they're signing up for. They don't have any idea that this truly is a compliance program and that there's certain, reporting requirements that they need to adhere to. They don't even know they're supposed to do it sometimes. So, that's an issue that we need to continue to educate on and hope that the industry will also continue to educate its members. Okay, so some compliant, and these are some of the things we've seen. Failures to contact an inspector or return communication. So these are registrants that have been chosen for inspection and sampling, and they have they failed to contact the inspector when the inspector has reached out to set up that inspection time, and failed to return communications, and this is just not acceptable. This is just not okay. This is just not okay, so we're gonna be taking a hard look at this year, because this is just, the inspection is one of the biggest compliance pieces of this program, and when we have our inspectors having to go back and forth and try to chase down these registrants, that's just, we can't have that. So we had them fail to meet the inspector for an inspection sampling, so the inspector drives all the way out to the registered land area to do the inspection. It was agreed upon that this inspection was gonna take place between the inspector and the registrant. You know, the time was set, the day was set, everything's set, and then our inspector goes out there and the registrant, again, this is not acceptable. So, you know, we're just coming off of inspection season, so I'm starting to compile all this information from the inspectors in terms of, you know, who these registrants are, and making sure that we aren't accusing anybody of this who hasn't done it, but also making sure we're correctly identifying those who have.
But that happens several times this season?
I wouldn't say it's several times, but it happens more than once, to more than one inspector.
Wow.
And, you know, that's just, everything about it is not acceptable.
Right.
So, certain failure to properly submit reports, and, you know, particularly harvest reports. Planning reports seem to come in a little better, because, you know, it's planning time, but the harvest reports by then, you know, they're just not being properly submitted. We see, for example, they'll give us, it says you're supposed to submit this 30 days before the anticipated harvest date, and the rules allow for a 10-day window, so you can harvest 5 days before that harvest date or 5 days after, but they just will put down a range of dates. You know, it's like, I'm gonna do it sometime within the last, you know, July, or something. I don't know, but the point is that it specifically says what, on the report, what we're asking for. And, you know, submitting them in a timely manner, this is a big area that we really need to, post-inspection season, take a hard look at.
So,
Yes?
like, let's say we're that's 5 acres, they'll give you, like, we're gonna harvest between September 14th and like September 30th, versus saying I'm gonna harvest acre 1, September 14th, acre 2, September 21st, that the latter is okay, but the former is not, correct? That, do you have a,
It needs to be broken out by planning location. So you have planning location, you have planning date, you have variety, you have location of the field, what else was we missing? Planning, and then your harvest date for that area, because we asked for the coordinates, and we asked for variety.
Yeah, each crop or each variety, each occurrence of planting can have a separate harvest date, and you can report them, each line item separately, yes.
More question on that.
No, we can't take questions to the end if we have time. This is
Yeah.
an internal meeting. So.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I know this is important to Terry, so I want to give him a chance to, no, okay.